You said it here the other day, predicting that this was inevitable with Carlos Beltran and the Mets. What was your reaction when you heard it happened yesterday?
Well, not surprised at all. Unfortunately, the Mets were backed into a corner here. They had no other choice. Imagine the bullseye that would have been on their back if they would have stuck with Carlos Beltran and gone to spring training in a few weeks here. You have the fans and the media, they're going to be all over you. Not to mention Major League Baseball is going to watch every single step the Mets make and make sure they're doing things the right way. That's undue attention that the Mets don't need from a public standpoint. And then inside the clubhouse, you never know how players were going to react to that type of manager.
So let's talk about Beltran here. He had a terrific career as a player. Some people believe that he is a future Hall of Famer. His career was that good. You played with him for 3 years. How do you think all of this impacts his legacy?
I think it depends who you ask, Greeny. I think there's a camp of people out there that say, well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And so I have no problem with steroids. I have no problem with stealing signs and doing other illegal things in baseball. And so there's a camp that this does not affect the way they view Carlos Beltran at all. Great player. There's another camp that cares about the integrity of the game, that cares about playing the game the right way. And he's going to have an asterisk by his name in that camp for the rest of his life.
Do you think he ever gets a chance to manage again? We've asked that question about Hinch. We've asked that question about Cora. I'll ask it to you about Beltran, who, again, was not in a position of leadership when all of this happened in Houston. Do you think he manages again?
I do believe that every one of those guys will get a chance. The question is how much time, how long is this scandal really going to linger? If this thing lingers for 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to take that long for Hinch and Cora and Beltran to get another chance. But I do believe we are in a very forgiving society. People give guys second chances. And by the way, if you would have asked me last week who are 3 of the top managers in baseball, I would have said A.J. Hinch, Alex Cora, and Carlos Beltran has a chance to be one of the top managers in baseball. So this doesn't take away from his ability to understand the game and to pick up on strategical instances where he can add value. And I just don't think that right away Major League Baseball is going to want those guys back in the game.
All right, Tex, stay with me here because there's another side to this, or at least another layer to it, because yesterday Major League Baseball said they found, quote, no evidence during their investigation to substantiate claims that the Astros used wearable electronic devices to alert them of certain pitches. That's the famous home run that Jose Altuve hit to win the 2019 ALCS. And then you can see him there telling his teammates, whatever you do, don't rip off my jersey. Don't take off my jersey. And when he was asked on the field about it immediately afterward, he said it was because he was shy, and the last time his jersey came off on the field, he got in trouble with his wife. Altuve released a statement through his agent, Scott Boras, yesterday, which was reported by the New York Post, saying, quote, I have never worn an electronic device in my performance as a major league player. This met with skepticism, to say the least, from across the sport. A couple of the Dodgers, who were on those World Series teams that lost to the Astros in 17 and then the Red Sox in 18, Cody Bellinger said, for the sake of the game, I hope this isn't true. If true, there needs to be major consequences that completely ruins the integrity of the game. Alex Wood tweeted, I would rather face a player that was taking steroids than face a player that knew every pitch that was coming. And so, Tex, I come back to you. You played in the big leagues for 14 years. This electronic device business really takes it in a different direction. Have you ever seen or heard of anything like that?
I've never seen or heard of anything like this. And if this is true, and I really hope it's not true, this is insane. This would be the craziest thing, and you're talking about year-plus suspensions for anybody that would be involved in this. Again, I hope it's not true, but Alex Wood is right. If you're a pitcher and you face a guy who took steroids, hey, I can still make him swing and miss. I can make him pop up. I can change speeds on him to gain the advantage. If you know what's coming, especially in a manner of a trash can of noise or buzzing on your arm, what a huge advantage for the hitters, and the integrity of the game is completely lost when devices like that are being used.
Now, so just to be clear, Major League Baseball essentially made a deal with the players that if they were honest about what they had done and what they knew, they would not face discipline. If that does become a situation where there can be some proof that there was the use of electronic devices, would that change it for you from what we previously thought? Do you think that there should be discipline involved?
Yes, and I think there should be serious discipline. And again, I hope this isn't true. But if it is true, now you have Major League Baseball going to the players over the past few months and saying, you get immunity. You're not going to be punished, but you better tell the truth. So if the cover-up was there, we all know, Greeny, in society, a lot of people make mistakes. We're all human. Nobody's perfect. It's the cover-up that gets guys in trouble. And in this case, if there was a cover-up, if those players were not being honest with Major League Baseball during this investigation, there will be huge punishments being doled out to these players.
Now, Tex, you've been great through this whole thing. Thank you so much for the insight. Have a good weekend, and we will check in with you again on Monday. Meanwhile, to other strange news from yesterday. Laura.
Yeah, here's the thing. LSU won the national championship. Nobody's talking about it because Odell Beckham Jr. has dominated the headlines. Now, New Orleans police issued an arrest warrant for Odell Beckham Jr. on a complaint of simple battery. Video surfaced, you see it there this week, showing Beckham slapping the buttocks of the Superdome security guard in the LSU locker room after the Tigers' national championship victory over Clemson on Monday. And as I mentioned, LSU wins the national championship, and yet Odell continues to dominate these headlines. But, Acho, what's your reaction to seeing this situation now and what continues to be just a wild night for Odell?
Yeah, first and foremost, you don't condone the behavior. You can't condone the behavior. It's childish, it's foolish, and knowing that you are Odell, you just can't do that in public. Now, with all of that being said, they won the biggest game in LSU history in the last decade and change. The players are celebrating. Odell is clearly inebriated, but most importantly, you're in what you believe as a player is a safe space. We've all been there. You're in the locker room. It's a safe space. Any security that's in that locker room is there to protect you from outsiders, not necessarily to do you in. Now, again, we're talking about legal matters, so I'm not saying what Odell did or didn't do or what we saw on camera is illegal. I'm just saying, as a player, we've been in locker rooms. You're there and you think that that is your safe haven. Odell can't do it because it's childish and immature, but the whole situation to me is just unfortunate.
Yeah, overall, it's a very benign situation. It's not something that should be looked at as being totally malicious and, quite honestly, getting the kind of fanfare that it's getting. But we understand why it is because, one, it is Odell Beckham, and two, it was caught on video. That's why we're talking about it. And look, You can't condone what he did, and I agree with you, Acho, because of the fact that there was plenty of ex-players down there, ex-LSU players down there who didn't do stuff like this, who were down there who probably were inebriated, for lack of a better word, too, who were feeling pretty good and feeling no pain that night also, but they're not in the spotlight right now, so he made a bad choice. But you are right. The way that this situation now is being exploded to where now you have an arrest warrant issued for assault. I mean, come on now. Come on, you're right.
That's my point. That's my point, Louis.
People who've been in those locker rooms, you do understand. There's probably some things that go on in there that many people wouldn't agree with, that maybe many people wouldn't condone. For it to get to this situation, though, this is a little ridiculous for me.
And that's the thing. If there was a problem at that point in time, like if you really had an issue with it, make sure you take care of it right then and there. And let's not get this all the way back to the police department 2 or 3 days later. The big issue for me, though, is the fact that you're, as an alumnus, you go back and you're hanging out with your former team, and you're there to enhance that and to enhance the quality and bring attention to them in a positive way. The fact that they have all these guys that are going pro, they have so many talented players on this team, and we're not talking about any of them.
The only reason we're not, and we said this at pre-show, because it's Odell Beckham. That is why. There's plenty of stars out there on the field who I'm sure weren't all acting appropriately. There are plenty of stars in New Orleans. I was there for the first half of that weekend. There was a lot going on. Now, Odell was handing out money. You can't do that. But if he wasn't Odell Beckham, this would not be near as big a deal as it is. Maybe still a big deal, but not as
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if any of our other colleagues who are LSU alumni, whether Ryan Clark or Booger McFarland, were handing out money or they were caught on video, Acho, doing this kind of thing, I think it would be a big deal. What happens, though, is I don't think it needed to be now accelerated into the situation that it is now, where now all of a sudden you're having people say, I had to restrain myself from punching him in the face. Punch him in the face for what? How about you could have actually de-escalated this situation to where it's not even an issue. But they decided not to.
If you want to, you turn and confront him right there and say the behavior was inappropriate.
That's right.
Don't do that anymore.
That's right.
I'm in here to help you guys. I'm trying to keep this thing under control.
Because that is my point, Bobby, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on the matter. They are there, and again, we've all been in those situations to kind of protect you and keep you restrained and just make sure that nothing bad happens. But if you don't do that, now all of a sudden it's an issue, a legal issue for no reason?
Well, my understanding is the security guard was telling the players to put out their cigars. There were cigars cigars.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to have the cigars in that circumstance. I'm going to move on to other stuff here. At some point today, I'm going to have to respond to all of this. But I want to get to the fact that there are actually football games of extraordinary consequence that are going to be played the day after tomorrow. And it's enough talking about someone who hasn't played a meaningful game in the NFL in a really long time. Let's talk about the AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes coming off a 5-touchdown game against Houston, looking to become the 5th youngest quarterback to start in the Super Bowl. If he wins Sunday, he'll have to beat this guy, and it's not easy to do. Derrick Henry has put up historic numbers. He's the first player to record 175 rushing yards in back-to-back playoff games in NFL history. And our analytics, like Kansas City, a sizable favorite, giving Mahomes' team a 75% chance to beat Tennessee. And one of the most prominent of the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill, is very confident about this matchup heading into it. We will talk about that, I guess, in a few moments here. But let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. And we bring Dan Orlovsky into the conversation here. Because as you watch Mahomes play last week, Acho, you made a comment reasonably recently on our show about how if you fall asleep against Kansas City on defense for 2 seconds, he just kills you. And Dan, we saw that last Sunday. Do you think he can do that again this week?
Oh, absolutely. Because they're so difficult to stop. And it really becomes a matchup game. If you're going to play them in zone coverage, you really have no chance. He's too good against zone and they're too smart. And if you're going to play them in man, well, they have too many people that you don't match up well against. And so the reality is, or the biggest question becomes, well, what do you do? Or how do you try and stop Kansas City? And I think you kind of have to go back, and Mike Vrabel needs to go to his mentor thought process with Bill Belichick and go, we got to beat these receivers up and beat them up at the beginning of the game, through the game, beginning of the routes, and through the routes. And you look at what the Patriots did years ago against a dynamic and explosive offense like the Colts. It was beating these receivers up at the line of scrimmage. It was beating these receivers up through the routes. And the challenge is, or the thought process should be, man, we're going to make these officials throw flags. And we got to eat 3 or 4 holding flags or illegal contacts because the risk first reward. If you beat these guys up, not only at the line of scrimmage, but through their routes, and if you get a couple flags on you, so be it. But maybe it holds them to under 30 points.
Well, Lewis, when you look at what the Chiefs bring to the table, there's so many weapons. Which one specifically, which of these guys do you say you've got to at least stop these two?
Yes. Size and strength never scared me. Speed always scared me. Okay? And Tyreek Hill has a whole lot of it. I mean, this is a guy who we don't even know how fast he really is because it really doesn't matter. It's kind of like Deion Sanders. He runs as fast as he needs to. And when he is aligned in the slot in particular, when you talk about, as Dan referenced, beating people up at the line of scrimmage, he had 8 for 129 from the slot in the first game. They didn't touch him. And you can see in these clips right here. Free access in the middle of the field for Tyreek Hill equals nightmare. It equals losses. And I know the Tennessee Titans won this game, but they didn't win this game because they slowed this guy down. This is the one time where Adoree Jackson gets up on the line to challenge him, but he doesn't really challenge him. He doesn't really beat him up at the line, as Dan referenced, because he got scared too. He thought, you know what, I'm just going to get into a foot race with a guy who maybe runs 4.2 in the 40. If you let him do that in this game, with the way they're going right now, Tennessee's going to go home disappointed.
Well, here's my thing, man. Y'all, the Titans aren't sitting in their locker room scared. They're not sitting there uttering the same speech that we are. They're sitting here saying, we got to do 2 things. Let go of our egos and let go of our capes. Don't try to be a hero. Last week, the Texans, too many of their players were trying to be heroes. J.J. Watt, phenomenal player, multiple-time MVP. But watch him on the outside. He goes inside. Everybody knows you got to keep edge contained. If you go inside, Greeny, that's an easy escape from Mahomes. He's lethal with his hands, but Dan, you know this. If a quarterback can pick up an easy 15 with his feet, that's tape. Then one more time. The same drive, 2 plays later. J.J. Watt trying to go get a sack, put Houston on his back. Mahomes escapes one more time. Again, 10, 12, 15 yards. They score on that drive. That was part of the resurgence. So if you're the Titans, don't be heroic.
And so everybody looks at the elite players for the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at Tyreek Hill, they're going to double him. You look at Travis Kelce, they're going to double him. You've used up all your defenders at this point. Mr. McCole Hardman, who when you look at him, he's the guy that could be the X factor, second in the NFL in yards per reception, 20 yards per catch. He's the guy that you will not have an answer for. And you can slow down the other 2 guys, but this gentleman, he's going to have one-on-one coverage.
What about Sammy
a
Watkins?
huge game.
I heard he's a good player. The key is
He's
Kelce. Kelce is, we're going to get into this. The key is Kelce.
Here's what I would say. If the Titans can petition the league to allow them to play with 14 men on defense, they have an excellent chance
Y'all talking scared.
of shutting them down. How about the NFC game?
Yeah, let's get there. The Packers and the 49ers, of course, another rematch from earlier this season in the regular season when San Francisco demolished Green Bay 37-8. Despite the win, though, 49ers offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey says there's only praise for Aaron Rodgers and none for his quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. Take a listen to this.
You hear the talk that, Aaron Rodgers is superior to, we think it's bullshit. And I think, not that Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer, but we're very confident that number 10 is just as good as anybody out there. And he's proven that time and time again this year.
It's fair.
Okay, Acho, you're excited about that.
Yeah.
Why is it? You're saying it's fair.
Because it's freaking confidence. I mean, I get it. Like, we sitting here and we talk so scared. Oh, my God, the Titans defense. Oh, my God, Aaron Rodgers. No, these dudes are in the locker room saying we're going to win this game. They're not up here trying to break down analytics of Rodgers' 14-year, whatever it is, illustrious career. They're the 49ers who beat the brakes or blow the doors off, to use your verbiage, blew the doors off of the Packers earlier. They saying they're going to do it again.
But the reason why we haven't sat here and praised Jimmy Garoppolo is because he hasn't earned the praise like Aaron Rodgers has. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has a Hall of Fame career, like McGlinchey mentioned. If Jimmy Garoppolo is going to trend on that career and earn that praise, well, it has to start this weekend. That's the only reason. No one's sitting here saying, man, Jimmy Garoppolo's won a couple Super Bowls and we're just talking about Aaron Rodgers. Like, Aaron Rodgers has earned the right to have us sit here and go, That's Aaron freaking Rodgers.
Here's the reality of it. Jimmy G came out last week and was on fire that first drive. Looked amazing. Then all of a sudden he throws that interception. Then he throws another questionable pass at the end of the first half. And then what did they start to do? They ran the ball. Kyle Shanahan to Jimmy Garoppolo. Look handsome and don't turn the football over, and we win this game.
One is easier than the other.
Well, which is easier? I mean, he's a handsome dude. That's just a compliment. But when he's making passes like this, and your team's as good as they are, and the defense is like that, don't give them an opportunity to stay in the game.
Look, it doesn't matter how good either one of these quarterbacks are. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's just talk about whether or not they're going to be able to remain upright during the course of this football game, because both of these guys are going to be facing pass rushes that can absolutely wreck your night. Remember when they met already this season, when the game got out of hand and Aaron Rodgers had to be that bad man that Stephen A. talks about, he couldn't do anything. You know why? Because he was facing this. He was facing an avalanche. And as far as Jimmy Garoppolo is concerned, they don't have the same depth as far as rushing the passer, that being the Packers. But I can tell you this, Za'Darius and Preston Smith are the truth. And they will get inside your head as quick as anyone. So I can take quarterbacks, look, they get all the praise, they get a lot of the blame. We get all that. But we know where the game's going to be decided. It's going to be decided in the trenches. And if you like premium pass rushers, watch this football game because they're all over the field.
Acho, let me throw the following thought at you. I like confidence as well, and I think players need to have it. But should you ever encounter Superman, are you going to tug on his cape? Is that a good idea? Are we tugging on Superman's cape? Do you need guys in the other locker room? It's all well and good for Greeny and Dominique Foxworth to question Aaron Rodgers on Get Up. I don't think if I'm in that on the opposing locker room, I want my teammates saying, Aaron Rodgers isn't really all that good.
Here's the thing, Dio, real quick. You can tug on Superman's cape if you got kryptonite. And they have Nick Bosa, Armstead, DeForest Buckner. They got kryptonite. So I think you can tug on Superman's cape in that thing.
Be careful what tree you want to bark up, because here's the thing. Those guys are really good players.
Great players.
None of them are playing for a legacy ceiling journey. Right now, Rodgers is on a legacy ceiling journey. He's defined his legacy.
They don't care.
Really throughout his. I understand that.
Care.
But guess what? Neither does he. He don't care about them either, because he's on a journey to seal his legacy as what could be the greatest quarterback of all time, or one of them, and certainly the greatest Packer of all time.
But we do know this. I don't care how good you are as a quarterback. You can't throw from your back.
Right.
Okay? And those guys have some of the biggest egos, and they should, because they have the biggest responsibility in sports. But these guys are hunters. Sure. These guys are dogs that are coming after
about it.
And they're hungry.
I want to talk about what is at stake for Rodgers in this game as we continue. We're just getting started in what is a full-scale Football Friday coming up on Get Up. He's running around and running over everyone in his path. Is there any way to stop Derrick Henry? And is that even the key for the Kansas City defense? We'll talk about it. Plus, Mike McCarthy is doing something he said he'd never do again. The big decision that will have a huge impact on the Cowboys next year. It's on the way. Get Up on ESPN.